The real problem is, we talk about the wall being a crisis, but we really have a housing crisis. And the problem is, it seems like legislators and those want to criminalize and blame us as rental housing providers for this problem. But the problem has started many years ago between NIMBYism, the need for seeker reform, and all these sorts of things. And now it has reached a crisis stage. And unfortunately, here in the second district, where we're in now, which is Mark Ridley's district, has the highest rate of homeless people there are. And the worst thing about it is all the people that are homeless are not criminals, not drug dealers and things like this. It's just that the cost of living and wages have not risen high enough. We were talking to a waiter a while back at, I think Ruth's daughter was talking to a server at the Red Lobster, real nice guy, and he was saying that even though he was making fairly good money there at working at the restaurant there, he said he really couldn't afford rent because he couldn't afford the first and security and move-in, so he was basically sleeping in his car and showering and changing at the gym and stuff. And he works every day. But when you think in terms of how much the average apartment costs and things like that, so among the real problems we have, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, is for these unincorporated areas that don't have rent control, where owners are now raising the rents considerably, and now just about every city that you hear about now, and I'll go into a little more detail on a few of them, are looking at relocation fees to kind of offset this displacement of tenants. And the other day in Englewood City Council meeting Tuesday, just backing up, last Thursday I got a call from the mayor, and he said, Mac, you guys got a real problem here. He said, my office has been flooded with calls. We have two owners that just taken over a couple of buildings in Englewood. One of them raised the rent 100%, and the other one raised the rent 150%. And this is just outrageous. So the mayor called, and we were able to get a hold to these two owners, and they agreed to, at this point, they agreed to rescind those notices and not to raise the rent for 3 months and then do some gradual increases. But subsequent, before that happened, I don't know if any of you watched Englewood or see it on television, but they flooded the city council on Tuesday with tenants' rights groups just jumping up and down that fact that we need rent control, we need relocation fees and all these kind of things. So sometimes, we're just not making wise decisions as rental property owners. Raising somebody's rent 150%, with a normal 60-day notice, that's really, out there. But even though we've argued in some cases where the rent has been far below market, but still, you can't expect a person that was paying $1,000 rent, you can't afford in 60 days for them to pay $2,000 a month rent. It's just not going to happen. And so now elected officials have found themselves in a real tough situation in terms of these kind of things. So like we're saying, and we've been meeting with some of the council people, and I just got another email from, in fact, just before we started, I got an email from Councilman Franklin where he said, he sent to me, he said, this went out on the Englewood site. Ladies and gentlemen, at the last council meeting Tuesday, several residents, concerned citizens raised about substantial rent increases. If you're a tenant in a rental unit and have just experienced an increase in more than 25%, we want to hear from you. So now you can imagine how this is going to start to take effect when people start calling the city and these kind of things like this. So one of our colleagues, these two particular owners did belong to the California Apartment Association. I talked to Fred Sutton, the local chapter, so he's reached out to them as well. But this is just becoming a growing problem. And in Long Beach, we had a couple of buildings that now we're trying to negotiate with the city on some type of relocation program. And what the tenants activists want is far more than we're trying to sell with. But it's just the thing where, as rental property owners, we have to realize and come to the point that, as I said many, many years, we just can't continue to say no. uh, city officials, elected officials, they're going to find themselves pushed into a corner where they're going to have to do something, and so we have to think about it in terms of is some type of relocation fee better than rent control? Because rent control comes with just cause and all these other things, rental registrations and things like this. And there are some owners that think, for whatever reason, they think we can just still say no and that we can fend off the elected officials on this. And we've been working with the 9 council people in Long Beach that are anti-rent control, and we worked hard with them. As you know, we were able to defeat the initiative in Long Beach to get it on the ballot, just as we were in Inglewood. And you would almost think, as a rental property owner, when you experience a great win in terms of defeating Prop 10, knocking off, defending off the initiative for rent control, that we would just be a little more wise in our business dealings in terms of that, realizing where we are, and the fact that after defeating Prop 10, and you understand, we defeated Prop 10 with almost 63% vote, which we thought was going to be very close. So that means through the education system, we were able to convince tenants that Prop 10 was not good for them. And then on the flip side of that, then we turn around and start raising their rent 150%. So it's just bad news, and it's bad business policy. So we're going to have to come to the table and start to think about this. And